Hello, hello. Welcome to episode, I think it's 7 or 8 of the Women Who Vagabond series. This interview series was inspired by my process of writing and publishing my own book, Vagabondess, A Guide to Solo Female Travel. And after spending about a year really focused on that project, I wanted to shift my focus to highlighting the voices and perspectives of other women in my network and beyond who are out there traveling and doing amazing things and whose insights I want to hear and I want to share with you. And I'm really excited about my guest today, Pavita, who just tuned in. She's a dear friend and colleague and a solo female traveler, a creative, a writer, an editor, a multi-passionate, multi-talented human, and I'm going to let her finish introducing herself.
Hey, Toby.
Hey.
Hi, how's everything?
Good. How are you?
Good. It is a snowy morning in New York City.
Can we see? Is that a window there?
It
Oh, it's really dark and snowy out there. How are you doing?
Kayla.
I think we have a little bit of a delay, but that's okay.
Okay.
Pavita, can you introduce yourself and share a little bit about who you are and what you do as a traveler?
Yeah. So I've been traveling pretty much my whole life. I have always been a wanderess and an adventurous. I'm currently living in New York City, but so far have traveled in 38 countries and 25 US states. And
Wow.
what I do as a traveler, I relish in connecting with other people. My personality is to spread light, love, learning, and laughter, and really just make the world and myself better and leave a little sparkle wherever I go with my, as I call it, fairy dust and wanderlust.
And you said you've been traveling your whole life, so did you grow up traveling as well?
I did. So my dad traveled very extensively for work. So even this is a an anecdote that I always share. So my dad actually missed my birth. I came 8 days early, and he was away traveling on business. Didn't know I was coming, but I guess I just thought from inside my mom, the world needs me right now, and I'm not waiting for anybody, not even my dad. um, but yeah, growing up, he would actually spend more days away from home than at home. And, you know, but despite all of that, he wasn't this what you would consider an absent father. Even though he wasn't physically present, he was always, spiritually and emotionally present. But, given that he was traveling so much, I feel like that, kind of incited the travel bug in me from an early age. And so, whenever we had the opportunity, whether it was a break from school or whether he had time, my sister, my family, and I, we would have the opportunity to travel with him. And so my earliest trip was actually when I was less than 6 months old. I took my first flight actually to Detroit for a relative's birthday from New Jersey. But ever since then, I feel like my whole life has been on planes. Some of my earliest memories have been, looking at maps and, figuring out where to go and, learning about different cultures and looking atlas books. It's always been a fascination of mine. And anytime my dad would travel, he would bring back gifts from where he came from, usually a book. In fact, I remember one time he brought home chocolates instead of a book, and I was wondering why he didn't bring home presents because I had associated books with presents. Um, but yeah, I mean, that's a little bit about my background and what kind of incited this love of travel in me. I feel like I owe that to my dad for, you know, starting this adventurous spirit in me, and to my mom for supporting his travels, but also supporting my travels.
Your story sounds so familiar to me because it's really similar to mine. I also grew up in a family of travelers with a father who traveled a lot for work, and family vacations also often included traveling. And I think it definitely, not always, but often does run in the family. Like, there's definitely something in the blood. And Pavita, you're a writer, and I want to talk about your project in a minute, but just more generally, I'd love to hear your thoughts on those connections between writing and reading and traveling, because I think they're so present for many of us who both write and travel.
Oh, absolutely, 100%. So literally anytime you're opening a book, you're traveling. You're traveling to a different place, to a different time, to a different person. You're literally traveling into the soul of an author when you're traveling. Oh, sorry.
Hmm.
And I think writing is the same way. It's a way, I consider writing or journaling almost like a map of the mind. It allows you to travel into some of the deepest parts of yourself that might be unexplored. Um, but I definitely feel like traveling just opens up so many stories. It gives you something to write about. If you're,
Yeah.
in my opinion, if you're traveling the right way, you're probably connecting with other people, you're gaining perspectives on different ways of living. It's a chance for you to reflect not only on your external journey, but also on your internal journey.
Absolutely. And it gives you so many stories. I love that you said that. It gives you something to write about. I sometimes feel as a writer that I need to take pauses from writing and actually go out and live and travel and adventure so that I have new material to write about after.
Yeah, absolutely.
And can you share about your current writing projects? Because you've got a lot of exciting things happening.
Yeah, thank you. So I have a couple of projects in the works right now. The first is, I guess my most current book project is I'm working on a poetry book that will be coming out in a couple of months, most likely in March or April, and it's called "To All the Magic in Me." And
Hmm.
essentially, it's a collection of poems that are structured as love letters to the whole range of life's emotions, both positive and negative. And essentially, the message that I'm trying to get across is that negative emotions are just as much a part of life as positive emotions, and they're part of the experience of being human. It's real, it's authentic, and essentially, that's what it is to live. And so, what I'm trying to get across through these poems is that negative emotions shouldn't be avoided like the plague, if you will. They should be embraced because they also have a lot to teach us. And, emotions aren't really black and white. Nothing, even the most negative emotions aren't going to be 100% negative 100% of the time. And positive emotions
Mhm.
aren't going to be 100% positive 100%. And so the message that I'm trying to get across is that embrace all of your emotions, even the ones that feel uncomfortable, even the ones that feel messy, even the ones that make you feel like you don't want to get up in the morning. Those are also part of your experience and they have a lot to teach you. That's part of who you are as a human. That's part of what your soul's experience is, and that's part of your inner magic. Um, and in terms of how that relates to travel, I mean, I think of so many of my own travel experiences, and I've had a lot of really great experiences, but I've also had, and again, I think this relates to if you're doing travel right, you're not going to be comfortable all the time. I think part of being a wanderist, part of being a vagabondist is allowing yourself to get uncomfortable and, getting yourself out of your comfort zone. And I can think of one particular experience in Kenya, and I think this is also a good segue into some of my other work and also to my next writing project. But I can think of an experience in Kenya when I was traveling in a remote village as part of my work with my nonprofit Girls Health Ed. And so I'll quickly talk a little bit about Girls Health Ed and what we do. So we're a nonprofit organization whose mission is to foster healthy and empowered decision making in adolescent girls and young women ages 8 and older. And we do this by providing comprehensive comprehensive health and sexuality education to adolescent girls and young women, particularly those in low-income, underserved areas where they're unlikely to get such information, either at home or at school. And so we have a very comprehensive curriculum that covers the whole range of topics. So that includes mental health, that includes self-esteem and confidence building, it includes nutrition and physical activity, it includes healthy relationships and violence prevention, reproductive health. I think when a lot of people hear the word comprehensive sexuality education, they're very quick to think of sex or sexual activity, but really, when done correctly, comprehensive sexuality education really encompasses the full, experience of what it means to be a human and to live in this world. And so I was actually in Kenya doing workshops as part of my work with Girls Health Ed. So we have workshops both in the United States and in Kenya. We've also done some pilot programs in India and Bangladesh. And Kenya was actually a very life-changing, powerful experience for me because first of all, it was my first official work trip as part of my nonprofit. So that felt very, it definitely felt like a professional growth experience. But, I stayed in this remote village called Kilgoris for a couple of days. It's 6 hours outside of Nairobi. And so, and I apologize in advance if anything that I'm saying comes across as privileged or elitist. I recognize what my personal experience was growing up, and I also recognize that different people simply have different experiences. So if anything that I'm saying does come across as sounding privileged or elitist, I do apologize in advance. But this is just an acknowledgement of my personal experience, and I recognize that it's not going to be the same for everybody. But when I was staying in Kilgoris, I was staying at the I guess you could say most fancy hotel there. And the most fancy hotel was not what one might consider a fancy hotel here in the States or in another country or even in a different part of Kenya. And that was definitely an experience for me. It was something that growing up I truly didn't think I would be able to do, but I did do it, and I actually enjoyed myself. And that really, I think it was certainly a character building experience because it helped me to, advance outside of my comfort zone. It helped me to get comfortable with things that initially did feel uncomfortable. And all while doing that, I was making a difference in the lives of hundreds of girls. So I had the opportunity to visit Kenya Center for Excellence, which is a series of schools in the Kilgoris area. And it was started by Kekenya Nataya, who's the executive director of Kekenya's Dream. And she had actually undergone female genital mutilation as a child. And she basically started this series of schools in order to help other girls and young women avoid that similar fate. So these are girls who are able to continue their education, to not have to follow that fate of having their bodies mutilated or go through child marriage, which is common in a lot of these tribes in the Kenyan and African villages. And so I had the opportunity to talk to these girls about their true lived day-to-day experiences in this village in Kenya, and what are the things that are important to them, what are the types of things that they worry about, what are the types of things that they're excited about, what are the things that they want to learn more about. And it was just amazing to see how passionate they were about their education. I think here in the United States, at least thinking about my own education experiences, I always enjoyed school, but school was also filled with a lot of anxiety for me. I had a lot of academic anxiety growing up, and there was always just this pressure to perform. And I know that for a lot of youth, school is marked by bullying or kind of unpleasant social experiences. And it was just amazing to see that these girls were so happy just for the opportunity to be in school. And they were asking questions like, How can we talk to our communities about the importance of education? How can we avoid things like child marriage and female genital mutilation? How can we stay focused on our education and on our goals? And so that was really a life-changing and powerful experience for me. And so that is actually a good segue into my other writing project is that after I have this poetry book published, I'm also going to be working on a travel memoir that kind of and yeah, absolutely, Toby, were very much an inspiration in the fruition of this project. For those of you who don't know, I actually edited Toby's Vagabondist. And if you haven't read it, it is truly one of the most magical pieces of work there is out there. Toby was actually my editor when we both worked at Elephant Journal. I did a writing apprenticeship with them and have been a writer for them. And I actually chose Toby as my personal editor. And I was so thrilled to be able to return the favor. And so Toby is actually going to be writing the foreword for my travel memoir, which is called 40 by 30. And it's it's the basically I had a goal to visit 40 countries before I turned 30. And, Toby, I'm actually going to be really interested to get your perspective when you write the foreword, because I feel like, even though we had very similar childhood experiences when it came to travel, I feel like, maybe some of the way that we approach travel as adults has been a little bit different. I've read some of your work, and I've read in Vagabondist where you talk about how the number of places that you've been isn't important to you. And again, I apologize if anything that I'm saying comes across as privileged or elitist, but for me, at least when I started my travel journey, the number was important to me. I grew up around a lot of high achievers. In Silicon Valley, I was surrounded by so many colleagues and people who were on these 30 under 30 lists. And, and I apologies. It was kind of the mindset that I was surrounded by. And so I think whereas, you were able to cultivate kind of an internal sense of motivation when it comes to your travel, I think for me initially, a lot of it was motivated by this external sense of motivation and, filling in a certain quota or being able to check off that I have been to this many countries. So initially the goal was actually 30 by 30. And if we do have some time, I'll be able to talk about how this goal actually started. But I managed to achieve 30 by the time I turned 27. And, I then thought, okay, I have to up the ante a little bit. I need to have something to work towards. So I made it 40 by 30. And of course, my dad was super supportive, and in my memoir I'll be talking a lot about some of the funny experiences, some of the reactions that people had to these goals, things that I learned in each of the different countries. But and I came really close to 40 by 30. In fact, this time last year I was at 38, and then come March, what happened? So I didn't reach the 40 by 30 goal, but I came very close. But I think that's something that I'm going to talk about in my book, is that part of the magic is the fact that I didn't reach that particular goal, but so much more came from just the experience of traveling. So that was my very long-winded response to your question. And I hope that was interesting to the listeners. And I know that we're running a little bit low on time, but these are all things that I'd love to delve into in future sessions, and that I hope you'll all read about in my book.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing, Pavita. I mean, I'm so impressed by and inspired by everything that you do and all of the projects that you have created and are in the process of creating. And I forgot to mention that in my introduction, is that we've both been each other's editors in the past, which is such a privilege and an honor. And then I do want to say that, having that external motivation of having like a set number of places we want to get to, I don't want to knock it either. I know I get into that in my book, and that's like a process of a lot of years of thinking about it. But I also understand where that comes from, and I think that's a totally valid way to start getting out into the world and to have that driving motivation. It makes a lot of sense. So I'm not knocking it
Yeah, yeah,
either.
totally. But I think it's just interesting to have those two different perspectives, because I would love to get to a point not only with travel but with other things in life where I do feel more of an internal sense of motivation and an internal locus of control. So and I think my travel experiences as well as other things that I'm doing can definitely help to facilitate that. So I think it's really
Yeah.
great to have both perspectives and to reflect upon.
Yeah, and that's as a bigger theme, that is such an interesting question, like what motivates us? Where does our desire to travel come from? Why are we going, and who are we going for?
Hmm. Yeah.
So,
So in my experience, I mean, I think there have been so many different motivating factors. So when I was growing up, I think a lot of it was just driven by family vacations and being able to accompany my dad on some of these travel experiences that he was having, both for business and for pleasure. I feel like I had a quite unique experience growing up, because given that my dad was traveling so much for work, my sister and I actually had some very unique opportunities as kids to be able to accompany him in work meetings as he was traveling. So whether that be, because he, when we were growing up, he worked in healthcare, and he still does work in healthcare, but in kind of a different sense. But we got to accompany him and visit different hospitals in different countries, and attend board meetings and kind of learn how business meetings work in different cultures. And so I think that's something that set me up on the path to success in my own professional life, just being able to understand how things work from different cultural perspectives, and especially from a professional perspective, being able to interact with people from different cultural backgrounds. I work with Girls Health Ed right now. I mentioned that we have programs in the United States, in Kenya. I'm also interacting with people from all over the world, and having that, just that cultural perspective from my youth, and being able to observe a lot of these things growing up, I think has really helped me in my work. Currently, I'm managing a staff of over 100, and that fellows. It includes, program coordinators in different countries. It includes my internal staff, and even board members. And this is, coming from a whole range of cultural contexts, not only from different geographies, but also, just different, perspectives growing up. And so I think travel was something that really, just set me up for success in that. It's also afforded me the opportunity to learn different languages. And let's see, what are other some of my other motivations have been. Sometimes it's just been, I have a vacation from work or from school, and I want a place to get away. Sometimes, and when I was in college, I actually had an opportunity to go on a class trip with my honors seminar, and we went to Prague and spent a week there, just kind of learning about the history and the society, which was a great experience. Sometimes it's bonding experiences. I went to Argentina with my sister in the break of 2018, and that was the trip that we did together, just the two of us. That all about it. Um, it was certainly a bonding experience, but I think sometimes thinking about that trip to Argentina makes me a little bit sad, because I think about my relationship with my sister, and how there are many ways in which I would like us to be closer, and in which I would like us to, have more of a bond that I see other siblings having. But I think taking that trip together was definitely a turning point in our relationship, and helped enable that kind of bonding experience. Um, it also just got me to think about some of my own habits when it comes to travel. So like you, I tend to be more of a solo wanderess or solo travelist. And traveling with other people is certainly a unique experience, because just in the same way that traveling in and of itself forces you to, get out of your comfort zone, it also, traveling with other people, I think, really heightens that experience because you know have to learn how to interact with somebody else in a new environment, and sometimes it's a matter of compromising. I don't make plans when I travel. I've traveled with other people who prefer to make plans and stick to a schedule. My thing is just I want to see where the universe takes me, and you know just let it be. um, Sometimes I've traveled for conferences or for workshops. Costa Rica was another one of my most magical experiences and one of my favorite places. And I attended a travel writers workshop when I was there. So yeah, really a whole range of motivations. And sometimes I just randomly pick a place because I want to get closer to my 40 by 30 goal.
And yeah, whatever the motivation, you end up having incredible experiences. I think that's also an important point. Like regardless of what brings you there, you end up there and you have that journey.
Mm-hmm.
We're almost out of time. I do want to mention that this interview series on Instagram is sort of a round one, and my intention later this year is to do a proper podcast. So hopefully I'll get to have you back and we'll be able to talk for longer and go more into depth in a lot of these themes. But before we close, something I'm asking all of my guests is if you have any advice or words of wisdom for anyone, but especially women who are wanting to travel solo and are afraid to begin or don't know where to begin, what would you tell them?
Do it. If you don't begin, then you will just miss out on the experience. If you are ever in New York City, hit me up. I think solo travel is great because it forces you to make friends with your environment and the people in your new environment. And I think that's really made so many of my travel experiences is I've managed to make friends in all of the places that I've lived and worked and traveled. And it just allows you to open yourself up to that opportunity. So don't be afraid to reach out to people. There are a lot of Facebook groups. You know, personally, I am a part of Girls Love Travel, which is how I've met some of the friends that I've made traveling. Or if you know people who have gone to a place or live in a place or are visiting a place, happen to be there at the same time as you, don't be afraid to reach out. But yeah, really, my motto has always been just let the universe take you where it wants to take you, and let yourself enjoy and have fun with that.
I agree 100%. Also, Costa Rica, reach out if you're coming this way. Pavita, thank you so much for coming on and sharing about your travels and your work and inspiring us with what you're doing.
Thank you so much. I look forward to being back and to connecting with all of you.
Likewise.
Have a good day.
Have a great day.